This is a note to the 3 people that watch this. It is thunderstorming, and I am fostering some kittens, one of whom is very talkative, so if you hear that in the background, now you know why.
Brainrot the news.
Hi, I'm Tessa with Brainrot News, with a few bits of news for you to choke on from March 31st. Global stock markets are currently in freefall, all bracing for the economic doomsday now marketed as Liberation Day. Yes, President Donald Trump is set to announce his latest round of tariffs on April 2nd, a day that will be remembered either as a great leap for economic nationalism or the moment the global economy collectively curled up and died. In the US, the S&P 500 is down 0.6%, the Nasdaq is tanking by 1.6%, and the Dow Jones is hanging on for dear life, just barely managing some gains like a drunk gambler convinced the next hand will save him. Meanwhile, Tesla and Nvidia are leading the corporate bloodbath, which is bad news for anyone who still believes in the tech bubble. Abroad, Japan's Nikkei index has collapsed by 4%, South Korea's Kospi has dropped 3%, and France's CAC 40 is down 1.6%, because apparently the entire planet just realized tariffs aren't some magical fix, but rather the economic equivalent of setting your house on fire to protest high rent. Investors, recognizing that we're all careening toward a recession cliff, are panic buying gold and hoarding treasury bonds like it's the financial apocalypse, which I guess, to be fair, it might be. The Trump administration insists these tariffs will liberate the US economy, which by that they probably mean jack up consumer prices, obliterate corporate profits, and stall growth. Goldman Sachs has even bumped up the chances of a recession to 35%, though let's be honest, that number is about as comforting as being told there's only a 35% chance your parachute won't open. But don't worry, Trump and his economic team, the same masterminds who thought a trade war with China was a fun idea, swear that tariffs will supercharge domestic manufacturing and shrink the deficit, because clearly the best way to reduce government debt is to tank the stock market and make everything more expensive. So buckle up, because if history has taught us anything, it's that Trump's grand economic plans tend to go about as well as his bankrupt casinos. The Democratic Party is spiraling into full-scale self-destruction as the base has realized that their own leadership is just as complicit in the slow-motion train wreck of American democracy as Trump and his merry band of fascist fanboys. The rage that was once reserved only for the right is now turning inward, and the party's old guard establishment is learning the hard way that you can't just coast on not being a Republican forever. Take Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He's facing so much backlash that his book tour has been postponed indefinitely, which is a real shame because we would all love reading another middle-aged politician's memoir about how hard it is to do the bare minimum. He's been dodging protests and calls for a primary challenge, but there's only so long you can run from the consequences of your own performative resistance. For years, Democratic leadership has played the role of the sensible adults in the room, but now that room is on fire, and they're still trying to negotiate with the arsonists. This internal revolt is shaping up to be the Democrats' version of the Tea Party insurgency, except instead of a bunch of rage-fueled geriatrics screaming about hating Obamacare, this movement is full of people who actually want to fix things. But don't expect the party elders to go quietly. They're already doing their best to suppress the grassroots uprising, clinging to power like a drunk hanging on to the last bar stool of the night. Meanwhile, the party is using upcoming elections like the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and Florida's special House election as a makeshift stress test to see just how much of a beating they can take before they have to pretend to listen to voters. Polling doesn't look great, with Democratic voters making it crystal clear that they're sick of watching their leaders play footsie with Republicans while the country lurches forward into full-blown authoritarianism. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders are still pulling crowds that could fill stadiums, proving that hunger for actual leftist policies isn't going anywhere. And in Arizona, party bosses are getting the boot in favor of challengers like Kat Abu Ghazali, who's calling out the Democratic establishment for what it is, a collection of overpaid losers who specialize in losing gracefully. At this rate, if Democratic leadership doesn't wake up and realize that their base actually expects them to fight, they're going to find themselves out of a job, because the people they're failing to stand up to, they aren't just trying to win elections, they're trying to dismantle democracy brick by brick. And if the Democrats' response to that is another press release expressing deep concern, they deserve every ounce of rage coming their way. Once again, Israel is doing what it does best, forcing Palestinians from their homes at gunpoint while pretending it's all in the name of security. This time, the Israeli military has ordered the evacuation of Rafah, Gaza's last so-called safe zone, because when your entire strategy revolves around ethnic cleansing, the only logical next step is to finish the job. This comes after Israel spent a great deal of time doing everything in its power to harm Palestinians by blocking food, fuel, and medicine for 2 million people to pressure Hamas into rewriting the truce agreement. Because being the good guy is when you starve an entire population into submission. And let's be honest, Israel never wanted a ceasefire to begin with. They just needed a break to reload and hope the Palestinians let their guard down. If that wasn't enough, Israel also managed to outdo itself in sheer brutality by murdering 15 medics in Rafah. These weren't people caught in some crossfire, they were wearing uniforms, riding in marked ambulances, and trying to save lives. But to Israel, a Palestinian in a uniform is just another target. The United Nations condemned it, aid organizations condemned it, but Netanyahu, he's too busy doubling down on plans to take over Gaza and push Trump's disgusting resettlement scheme, which Palestinians have rejected, and human rights experts are calling illegal. Of course, Netanyahu doesn't care. Why would he? Israel has spent decades bulldozing homes, stealing land, and committing war crimes with zero consequences. And thanks to the US government and its blank check of military aid, they don't even have to pretend to care, because when you have American politicians in your pocket and the world's most powerful propaganda machine on your side, genocide is just another policy decision. But here's the thing, history doesn't forget. The world is waking up, and no amount of PR spin or Hasbara-funded nonsense can hide the fact that Israel's actions in Gaza are a crime against humanity. The question is, how much longer will the world watch this horror show unfold before finally saying enough? How long can you keep pretending this isn't wrong? Donald Trump, lifelong champion of the working man, if the working man is a billionaire tax cheat, has signed an executive order officially kneecapping federal labor unions and agencies that deal with national security. Because when your entire governing philosophy revolves around punishing people for existing, gutting workers' rights is just another Tuesday. The order effectively bans collective bargaining for workers in departments like state, defense, homeland security, specifically the border security folks, because of course, and even the VA, because we love our veterans means stripping them of their rights in the workplace. Yep, the justification? The administration dug up an old provision in the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, claiming that labor unions could impede vital operations, because obviously it's unionized janitors and HR reps who are the real threat to national security, not the guys leaking military plans in a signal chat. Naturally, unions are pissed. The American Federation of Government Employees is taking this to court because, shocker, many of the workers affected are veterans, the very people the administration claims to worship. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is already filing lawsuits in Texas, because that's where all bad ideas go to thrive, to help grease the wheels for eliminating collective bargaining agreements. AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler called it what it is, pure political revenge. Trump has always hated unions, mostly because he's never had to work a day in his life and thinks solidarity is a word you only use when defending your favorite dictator. The White House is sticking to its talking points, insisting that this is all about protecting national security from the terrifying threat of workers negotiating for fair wages and job protections. At the end of the day, this is just another chapter in the long-running GOP playbook. Strip workers of their rights, claim it's for their own good, and then act surprised when the economy crashes. America first is when you make sure the people keeping the country running have absolutely no say in how they're treated. Nothing brings people together quite like unhinged billionaire tyranny. Protests have erupted across the United States and Europe as people rally against Elon Musk's reign of terror at the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Under Trump's watch, Musk has been handed the keys to a government purge operation so extreme that it makes Reaganomics look like a universal basic income plan. Entire agencies are being deleted, sensitive government data is now just a fun little side project for his child tech bros, and social safety nets are being trimmed with the efficiency of a Tesla self-driving car veering into oncoming traffic. The nationwide demonstrations have hit Tesla where it hurts, right in the showroom. Protesters stormed all 277 Tesla locations in the US chanting "Honk if you hate Elon" and "Fight the billionaire oligarchy," proving once again that people are really over this guy's nonsense. Meanwhile, in London, protesters compared Musk's government overhaul to, you guessed it, authoritarian regimes, because when you start firing civil servants en masse and handing classified documents payments to meme stock traders, that's generally not great for democracy. The movement, Tesla Takedown, has some notable backers: disillusioned Tesla owners, because even the fanboys are tired of Musk, celebrities like John Cusack, and Democratic lawmakers like Representative Jamie Crockett and Representative Jayapal have all thrown their weight behind the resistance. While most protests have been peaceful, some have taken a turn for the extreme, such as Tesla vehicles torched in Rome and incendiary devices found at a dealership in Austin, Texas. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi was quick to label these acts domestic terrorism, proving once again that property damage to the rich is the only crime that ever gets taken seriously in America. The great news? Tesla's European sales have plummeted by 49% in just 2 months. Turns out people don't love the idea of their car payments funding Musk's tech road dictatorship, and with public sentiment now at an all-time low, Musk might soon find himself in a rare and unfamiliar position, actually facing consequences for his actions. In yet another episode of the Elon Musk and systematic dismantling of reality, a federal court filing alleges that an employee from the Department of Government Efficiency, the same agency currently treating the federal government like an overstaffed Subway franchise, has been put in charge of the U.S. Institute of Peace. That's right, Peace, the think tank funded by Congress once dedicated to preventing wars and stabilizing global conflicts, is now apparently just another casualty of Musk's hostile takeover of American governance. This appointment comes hot on the heels of a late-night mass firing of nearly all 300 US IP employees, because nothing screams commitment to peace like a bloodless bureaucratic purge. Those fired reportedly received a strange email: "Your services are no longer required," effective immediately. No severance, no transition plan, just an institution dedicated to diplomacy getting wiped off the map faster than Trump's last brain cell during a deposition. Now, the lawsuit seeks to block Doge's latest move, arguing that you can't just throw an unqualified government efficiency bro into the leadership of a peace institute and hope for the best. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell has scheduled a hearing for Tuesday, because apparently we still pretend there are legal limits to this madness. Meanwhile, the White House has gone radio silent, presumably because the press team is still in the fetal position from the last 800 controversies they had to pretend were totally normal. So what's next? Will Musk put a SpaceX intern in charge of the FDA? Replace the Library of Congress with X-Premium subscriptions? At this point, nothing is off the table. And if peace itself can be privatized like gutting a failing startup, the only real question left is, what dystopian disaster do these lunatics have planned for tomorrow? The Trump administration has officially taken a flamethrower to clean energy funding, because why invest in the future when you can just double down on choking the planet to death right now? The DOE has already axed 2 clean energy projects, including one that aimed to reduce energy consumption in low-income housing and another that studied EV car sharing programs. You know, pointless things like making life more affordable and not drowning coastal cities. Instead, Trump and his fossil fuel cronies have decided that renewables just don't align with their objectives, which is administration speak for not enough oil barons are getting richer off of it. Now, about 300 other clean energy products are up for review, meaning the DOE is basically lining up a firing squad for anything that doesn't involve drilling, fracking, or burning stuff at record-breaking levels. Critics, including Representative Marcy Kaptur, are pointing out the obvious consequences: higher energy costs, lost jobs, and a general plunge into environmental dystopia. But honestly, if you thought this administration cared about jobs or affordable energy, you haven't been paying attention. This isn't about energy independence or market forces. This is about squeezing every last drop of profit out of fossil fuels before the planet literally starts melting, because God forbid we invest in renewables when we could just keep pumping oil like it's the 1950s and call it patriotism. The Trump administration is once again playing its favorite game of deport now, ask legal questions never, this time sending 17 people branded as gang members to El Salvador via U.S. military transport, because a fair judicial process is when you throw people on a plane with a vague "they're criminals, just trust us" explanation. This round of deportations included gang members of Venezuela's Tren de Agua and MS-13, but with the administration's track record, gang member could just mean wrong accent, wrong neighborhood, wrong documentation. Secretary of State Lowell Marco, the lightweight choker, conveniently declined to clarify what legal authority was used to justify this latest purge, which probably means they don't have one. In the past, the administration tried using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, because apparently upholding democracy is dusting off 18th century xenophobia. The ACLU immediately challenged it in court, and shocker, the U.S. Court of Appeals blocked the whole thing. That didn't stop Trump from doing it anyway, declining to turn the plane around against the judge's orders, and depriving migrants of the chance to claim persecution or torture because, hey, who needs human rights when you can just shove people onto a plane and call it security? Fortunately, a U.S. district judge has now slammed the brakes on this horror show, citing basic protections under the Convention Against Torture. That's right, things have gotten so bad that courts are having to remind the White House, hey, you're not actually allowed to send people to places where they'll be tortured. With the Trump administration declining to give a reason for most of these recent deportations, it seems that at this point they may be doing whatever they'd like and daring the court to enforce the law. Only time will tell whether they actually do. With an administration that sees human suffering as a policy win, this fight is far from over. The Trump family diving headfirst into the crypto world is like handing a match to an arsonist and acting shocked when everything burns down. In late 2024, they took over World Liberty Financial, a decentralized financial venture that somehow miraculously ended up entirely centralized under their control. Over the following months, WLF raked in a casual $550 million from investors who, apparently, had never heard of Trump University or Truth Social's stock market acrobatics. The official mission of WLF? Decentralized finance for the people. The actual mission? Decentralized finance for the Trumps. They secured 75% of net revenues from token sales and 60% of all the platform's profits, all while handing investors governance tokens that let them pretend to have a say, except these tokens don't include profit sharing and can't even be traded because a financial revolution is buying into a system where you have no power and no way out. Shockingly, and by shockingly I mean completely predictably, despite raising $500 million, WLF still hasn't launched its platform. But don't worry, development is ongoing, which in Trump speak means we're either grifting, stalling, or figuring out how to blame this collapse on immigrants. Meanwhile, the financial world is side-eyeing this entire operation like a Ponzi scheme with a gold-plated T on top, and experts are raising serious concerns about conflicts of interest. Let's be real, when the sitting president's family is directly profiting from an unregulated financial scheme, you don't need to be a crypto expert to see where this is headed. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has a message for Donald Trump. Try it and see what happens. This warning comes after Trump's latest foreign policy masterpiece, an ultimatum demanding Iran sign a new nuclear deal within 2 months or else. And by or else, he means the thing he threatens every country with, bombs, because nothing says great deal maker like holding an entire nation hostage. Khamenei made it clear that Iran has no intention of playing Trump's game, stating that any act of aggression by the US will be met with a strong blow. Now, for those unfamiliar with the history of the US-Iran relations, here's a quick recap. Iran was actually following the 2015 nuclear deal like a kid trying to impress their strict parents, and everything was fine. Then Trump, fueled by spite and whatever Fox News segment he had just watched, tore up the deal and slapped on brutal sanctions that tanked Iran's economy. Fast forward a few years, and now he's pretending to be surprised that Iran isn't excited to negotiate under the threat of airstrikes. Iran took the mature route and responded through Switzerland's embassy, the diplomatic equivalent of using a mediator in couples therapy, while the US is outside throwing rocks out the window and yelling, "Come out and fight me." And of course, Western officials are once again freaking out about Iran's nuclear program, insisting they must be secretly making weapons, because obviously, after watching the US backstab them on the last deal, Iran should totally trust America again. It's like stealing someone's lunch, punching them in the face, and then demanding they lend you money. It's almost impressive. Trump tears up a nuclear deal that was actually working, cripples Iran's economy with sanctions, and then demands they come crawling back to sign a new deal under the threat of bombs. And when Iran says, yeah, no, he starts chest thumping about military action like a guy who just lost a bar fight but is still yelling, "Hold me back." This entire crisis is one of America's own making. The US broke the deal, lied about why, and now expects Iran to crawl back to the table under the threat of military force. One thing is clear, with Trump's deadline ticking down, we're about to see whether this is just more blustery saber rattling, or if Trump is actually deranged enough to ignite another catastrophe in the Middle East. That's all from Brainrot News. Like, subscribe, and let's all pretend we'll get through this.